McCarthy. Gary Van
Sharon Farnham.
Karen Mitchell.
Okay, so we have one. Do I have a motion for approval of minutes? Last meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Item 3, recognizing in the audience. I wouldn't fool you.
I'm a first time comer.
Item 5, new business. Discussion concerning the number of meetings and the schedule going forward this next year. We have comments?
Mr. Chairman, so I believe that we as a committee ought to meet more often or more frequently. And I wouldn't mind, so I would propose that we meet quarterly, certainly not once a year. Quarterly would be my preference, and so once every 3 months, in which we are, we'll ask the city staff for a breakdown of building permits, a breakdown of fees collected, and a breakdown of monies spent from those fees. So the funds that are collected as part of this committee's oversight, and find out where it's going, and things of that nature. So I have some concerns about not so much fee payment or fee expenditures, but rather infrastructure that we have, water and sewer. It's come up quite a lot. And
not necessarily our purview, but
it actually is.
Is it?
It is indeed. So we are not a decision-making body, as you well know, but we are a recommendation, an advisory body. And so, in fact, if the committee so desires, I wouldn't mind reading through it. Actually, it's in the notes too, which is nice. Outlines that were provided probably by Brenda. Title 67, Chapter 82, talks about development impact fees.
Does anyone object to quarterly?
Mr. Chair, I have a question about the water and wastewater. Those are not impact fees. Those are availability fees. Those aren't.
Whatever you call them, the state code, I think, is pretty clear that they are included as part of the fees collected by municipal government. And just so happens that we have, this isn't an exhaustive search, but we do have other cities and municipalities that include water and sewer infrastructure as part of their committee.
Can I finish?
Sure.
Oh, thank you. This city didn't include that in our impact fee committee. So other cities may have, but
Yeah,
Mountain
we've
Home
always
didn't
not
do
been
that.
part of our purview.
Right.
I have a disclaimer to make. I have any problems with meeting quarterly. Sharon Farnham and myself, this will be our last meeting that we'll be at. We've been on it quite a while, and it's obvious that it needs more attention than once a year. So I agree with you on that. So we won't be voting on this particular item, but it's certainly very reasonable to evaluate what's happening with the city on a more regular basis than once a year. It was fine 10 years ago when we had close to 0 building permits in a year. There wasn't much happening. So,
Mr. Chair, I would also express the agreement of at least meeting quarterly. I think that should be at least our bare minimum for this advisory committee. for regular meetings. I think we can still have any special meetings if anything comes up. But I believe quarterly would be great, especially if we can involve department heads such as streets, parks, as well as fire and police. I have gone through the Idaho code regarding our advisory committee fee, and it is pretty explicit in laying out how much our committee is supposed to be involved with CIP and planning, and I think that that is something that we should probably discuss tonight. I think when we met in November, the idea was that we were trying to get some things in-house done before we went and took on the county's, I guess I don't want to say wish, but the idea of working with the county on it's something I expressed in November that I felt, and I still stand by that I think that really our committee, we should get things in-house ordered a little bit better before we go on with the county. I'll state for the record, I'm not against collecting impact fees with the county for EMS and that. I think growth should pay for itself. It has to be done, I think, correctly and methodically, and we need to have those conversations. I have many conversations or questions for the county when it comes to their impact fees that they're advising or they're requesting, but again, I think we met in November to really kind of look at what this body, what our duties as appointees are, and I think that is something really would be beneficial for us to do tonight before we continue. So, sorry, long-winded spiel, but I was just trying to say that I agree with Taryn that I think that we should be at least meeting quarterly to meet with the respective department heads. So.
Mr. Chair, I have another question. I guess I don't understand what the CIP is that you're asking the department heads to discuss, because you have it in front of you. There's nothing that the departments can change on that, and if they requested an expenditure, it's approved by council. So I don't know where that discussion would need to be had with a department head.
So I will, Mr. Chair, I believe we were given the city council meeting for July 23rd. I did review it and I thought it was very instructive. I would like to thank Mr. Schroeder, legal, for laying out this advisory committee, as you heard, Ms. Dyfax. And the way I took the meeting from the city council and the explanation of our committee is we're very much, and forgive me, Mr. Schroeder, if I paraphrase your words here, but I believe you had talked about how we are in the trenches and we're doing the work on when it comes to planning. So like, we'll take the example for streets, looking at what growth is, what infrastructure is needed to support growth for lighting. It could be anything from parks. And so that when you look at the Idaho code, here,
I might be able to help clarify this.
please, thank you.
So I think we've got two things are kind of being brought forward at the same time. So there's the one elephant in the room, which is how this entity and its sister committees, Glens Ferry and the county, are going to tackle a capital improvement plan for the county. But Taryn's suggestion is to be quarterly to review the city's capital improvement plan, and that is squarely within the purview of the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee regarding the CIP and periodically updating and reevaluating land use and assumptions that are made on it. So I think, anyway, I think that helps maybe answer your question. So in other words, in these quarterly meetings, they're wanting to, it sounds to me like he's asking to review the city's CIP assumptions. In addition to the other task, which I think we'll meet on February 6th, and we'll figure that out with the county's CIP. So anyway, so their intent is to review more frequently than annually, if I've got this right, the city's CIP.
Mr. Chair, if we could continue down the agenda to where we've established that we would like to meet quarterly, because we are going to go into an open discussion later on with some of the rest of this can be hashed out so we can move along the agenda.
Yeah, and we do have an April 7th date, so we do have our first quarterly, I guess you could call it, scheduled as well. Um, do we need to take a vote, or whether we meet quarterly or not, or is that,
Mr. Chair, let's ask legal on that. Do we need to make a motion, Mr. Schroeder, to do that?
Okay, I'm rusty at this, so, committee members, I would like to make a motion that our committee, subsequent members, so current and subsequent members, meet quarterly every year.
second? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, and I guess, obviously, the EMS impact fees, obviously, that could be a monthly one until you guys, you know what I mean? I just don't want you guys to, like, put this off for another quarter, because we're trying to work with the county and Abby. Council has requested that everything start to go through legal. So anything that we communicate with the council all goes through legal from here on out. So I will send Jeff hey, this is what we're doing. And then he'll get with Abby. Can we meet? Hence the February 6th meeting.
Yes.
So I think to clarify, just so you're changing your correct thing to meet no less than quarterly, but I think he's mentioning that,
Yes.
by the way, this other task is going to be probably more frequently.
Which those would be within the special meeting
Yes.
reviews.
Yep.
So we
Yes.
can schedule those at a request, I believe. Is that right, legal?
Well, pending your schedules.
Yeah.
Right.
And we want to be fair to your time too. So, hence, that's why, sorry to throw my 2 cents in here, but that's why when we give you guys an email, we kind of need that back, so then I can get that to Mr. Schroeder, and then he can get with their legal team, because it's been delegated to legal now.
Got it.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir?
why are we having to run that stuff through legal all of a sudden? What's the driving factor? I'm curious if there's things going on that we need to be aware of on that.
Council wanted what's the best choice? One voice, one person to say, hey, this is what's going to happen. So you guys say, hey, Mayor, this is what I want to do.
Okay.
I go to Jeff, just keep everything clean.
Perfect.
So that way, there's no he said, she said, there's no any, I would say, not animosity, but no issues with county going, hey, where are we at? Well, talk to your legal, they know where we're at, you know? So I think that's why. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yep. Just makes it everything simpler. So that you don't like going to Brenda comes to me, or I go to Jeff comes to me, then I go to you. So it's just one unified, boom, boom. Then he goes to Abby. Boom.
Mr. Chair, I would like to confirm your statement regarding that you and Sharon this will be your last meeting. Does that mean you are going to remove yourself from the board, or does that mean that you will be unavailable the remainder of the year?
Remove ourselves.
So, Chairman, Councilor Short, I thought I had to have no less than 5.
So, yeah, so you'll have to appoint some replacements.
We do have Ray Larry on here.
Oh, that's okay. So we'll have 4 of these. 5. Oh, we'll have 5. Never mind. Okay.
It'll be more difficult to get it for him, perhaps.
Nope.
And I'll volunteer Sharon if there is a problem. I'll have to drive her, but I'll bring her.
Somebody wants to pick me up and take me home.
Okay, so, general board discussion then?
So, Mr. Chair, there is another new business item to establish the meeting date with the county. The county has reached out to us, and they are willing to meet the first Thursday in February as a joint meeting with Glenn's Ferry and the Elmore County DIFAC as well. At this time, I don't think a set time has been set, but a date has. And so we want to make sure, we wanted to see if this committee would be available on that date to participate in that joint meeting.
What day is it?
It's the first Thursday. Again, I don't have a time. I'm hoping the county will work with us and your schedules, because I know that evenings work best for you all. And so hopefully we can get that scheduled in an evening timeline. So, however, if we cannot, would you be available in the morning?
Nope.
As long as we get some notice, I can work fine.
Of course,
No.
I'm a working stiff.
so Glen's Ferry's P&Z met last night, and that is functioning their Impact Fee Advisory Committee, Planning Zoning Commission, and they were wondering, and I said, it's the 6th, I don't know exactly the time, and I threw 6 or 7 p.m. out. So, just as a
Okay.
couple of,
So
6 or
sounds
7 p.m. on
sounds
the
like
6th.
yes,
sounds like an evening meeting
yeah,
would be
that would be fine.
in the realm of possibility. So.
Mr. Chair, Brenda, did they, so I'm on those emails as well, and there wasn't really a whole lot of clarification on what specifically we're going to be discussing.
You know what I know?
Okay, so before I commit to anything, even on that committee, I have a few outstanding requests of information from them, which up to this point have been not provided to me. And so I would like a schedule of values or something that corroborates their claims about costs and monies collected and monies spent.
Mr. Chair, perhaps legal can help determine what, if he has any idea what the conversation is about.
Specifically the jail.
Yeah, I think their intent is to, at this joint meeting, perhaps present some of that stuff, or be available. Our ask, and what I communicated with Abby yesterday, is that there would be people responsible for those components of that capital improvement plan at that meeting and available and ready to explain.
Excellent.
So that's what I understand.
Mr. Schroeder, do you know who is going to be, not orchestrating, but who's going to be conducting the meeting?
No.
If it's a discussion, I guess what I'm getting at, if it's a discussion, I would like it to be a discussion. I don't want someone to say, okay, nobody say anything, like point at you and you can talk.
Yeah, I'm going to guess that Abby and I are going to end up being some sort of facilitators.
Good choice of words.
So, Mr. Schroeder, so if we have specific questions, should we forward those questions to you to send to them to get answers? Because I have several questions regarding the jail and some of the other items that we're being asked to, look into and collect fees on.
They've got pretty good meals. You can do weekend jail.
I prefer roadside trash pickup. Get the outside. Jeez.
Councilman, Counselor, I thought we were only supposed to be discussing EMS. That was it, and then the jail stuff is supposed to be at a future, long time down the road one.
So I think in order to facilitate getting the jail one set off to the side, the county can understand what kind of their task is for their consultant to reevaluate the CIP. So yeah, he's right. The main focus is getting your arms around the EMS one, because there's a great deal of work to be done on that one regarding the intergovernmental agreement and potentially setting up service areas, which are we can get to in a bit. But anyway, because this is such a heavily definition-laden statute, so service units, service areas, all that stuff contains a definition we have to hew to and comply with, and it can be tricky. And so their legal counsel and our legal counsel, me, are on the same page when it comes to that sort of stuff in terms of advising our respective clients about the legality and the efficiency and the ability to do that. And then the meat of that's going to be in the intergovernmental agreement on how those fees are assessed and collected. So Yeah, thank you yeah, we're not gonna fix the jail one on February 6th. That's gonna be a ways out, but we're gonna give us all and everyone some guidance on what needs to be done to that one.
For EMS.
Counselor, that meeting in February with the joint committees, that will not be a decision-making meeting at all, correct?
I don't think it will, no.
Good question.
Okay.
Chair, however, drafting your questions ahead of February 6th, getting them to city legal would be a recommendation so that your answer, you can get answers on the 6th. That's only fair.
For EMS only.
Or jail.
I would do any that you have at
Yeah.
this point.
The more they know about the questions that you have and the stuff that we have to do to make this, to recognize legitimately that it's either palatable enough that we can adopt it, or this isn't happening with the jail or the UMIS, or it's not going to happen unless it's done this way. And the more of that can be communicated to the folks that have that, the better.
Do we need to make a motion on that, Counselor, to meet with the joint committee? Jen?
Yeah. Is that a requirement, or you're just?
Yeah, make a motion to
Do we
meet.
need a time, though? I can't meet during the day. I'm lazy most of the time these days.
What do you guys prefer, 6, 7, 5?
Mr. Chair, if I can ask, what's the plan for location? Is it
It would, I believe that location would be at the Old Forest Service building.
Okay, just curious.
Well, any opinions about when? I say 6 p.m. It would be my preference.
That would work well.
Mr. Chair, this will be the last time I do it today. May I make a motion?
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion that our Impact Fee Advisory Committee meet with the county's DIFAC, which is the equivalent body, on February 6th, 2025 at 6 p.m. to discuss EMS and a few outstanding questions that we hope to get answered. So I didn't mess that up, did I, Mr. Schroeder? You weren't listening.
I was.
We have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You can.
We can force these guys. Item 6, open discussion, general board.
So we do have some staff who would have some other appointments, and so if you would like to hear from them, or they would like to speak with you directly, we're going to open that up to them, which would include Tiffany, perhaps Paula, and then legal, going over the state code with us as well. So
I was only to be present by city legal, so.
My only thing, ladies and gentlemen, well, one, I want to say thank you to Sharon and Gary, too. You guys have been the staple, like, the glue that I've it's always been here. So I want to say I appreciate all your service for all these years. So on behalf of the city, thank you. So, two, I know this is not EMS related, but I think as moving into the 21st century, the city has to think outside the box. We have to be innovative. We got to be creative, and I know that this body will do that. And here moving forward, I think Chris will probably do a presentation for you guys when it comes to some street things that we want to try out, and it's gonna need your blessing, right? To put it on our impact fee. What's what I'm looking for? CIP. I think I've been trying to push for it for 10 years. If I would have known it, what I know now, it would have been on there 10 years ago. But we didn't have impact. Well, we had impact fees, but obviously we didn't collect anything from them. But here moving forward, I think side of West Mississippi that we can find. So if we can cut our costs, I think what is 190 to 220 square yard to 15, let's say that's $45 square yard to be down through relay pavement, I think that's a game changer. And so we'll be asking this body to look at it and move forward. That was my only caveat I think I had to ask you guys here to look at for us. But I think Paula came up with an idea, and we're like, why did we think of that? And so always Paula. And then
I'm
service.
leaving too, Gary, it's like,
What's the price tag that we've been
yeah, there you
bouncing
go.
around here for this piece of equipment?
Right? It's a lot. Service areas. I definitely want to delve into that, but I won't waste you guys' time right now on that one. But that one's a huge one, I think, for the council as well. I speak to them kind of offline on some of the things with the EMS fees. They come in quite a bit. So we'll talk more of that later. But that's all I have. So I'll give it a shout out. Thank you for your service. I thank you all for your service, but
Yeah,
thank you too. Sorry to see you guys go.
Well, you get old at a certain point, you gotta kind of back off.
Well, this is what I tell everybody. You got 3 years left in me, right? You got me for 3 more years, and then I'm gonna sail off into the sunset as well. So, but that's all I have for right now, and then I'll probably will see Brendan more than probably all the rest of you. But Tip, what do you got?
I don't have anything.
Chris?
I do, Gary, I was here when we've all started the impact fees, and the answer we would get from the consultant is, well, if you don't collect them, you can't spend them. They didn't give us the formula, they didn't give us anything. So, I mean, I think we made it through it, and now we understand it, yeah.
Yeah. And then some people jumped ship a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the dark side. Well, I really, it's been working with Gary on this. I was on this Impact Fee Advisory Committee as well.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, you jumped.
Being on the council when we adopted the first set of impact fees and then spent the next couple of years trying to figure out how to lower them. And it was digging into this statute that I know more about it than I want. And it's, but having the insight and the input from developers as the statute requires, and then again, reevaluating the land use assumptions, reevaluating the assumptions, particularly when there isn't any building going on and there isn't any.
That was the whole point. It was kind of a non-event.
Yeah. Anyway,
Because of lack of development, not lack of growth. And now things have changed dramatically, and so
well, and one of the fundamental assumptions was that you would get new tax revenue for new development, and due to House Bill 389 passing, that's capped at 5%. So your budget can't grow more than 3% of the regular growth and 5%. If your assessed value increases more than 5%, you don't get any additional tax revenue to support services that are required for that. That put a renewed emphasis on development impact fees in all these little communities in the state. And so now I've had to really dig into more these intergovernmental agreements with fire departments and cities are all over the place.
I do, my last comment here. When I took office, I was approached by Todd McCurry of why City View Drive was never done. And I said, I don't know, that's a good question. I'm a new guy here, right? So I went to Paula and I said, hey Paula, do we have any funds to put in City View Drive? And she goes, well, Mayor, actually, if you don't spend this money this year, you're going to lose it because we have to get back to said developers or whatever. So because of this Impact Fee Advisory Board, we were able to put in City View Drive, and then we got Dutch Brothers, Taco Bell, the Tidal Wave Car Wash, and then whatever comes into the future. So thank you for that, because without these impact fees, we didn't have the funds at that time to put that road in. The infrastructure was in, other than and I guarantee we can't do 350 feet of asphalt, curb gutter, and sidewalk for 75 grand. that time has passed, right? But that's what it was back in the
Is
day.
that right?
Yeah, we did it all for $75,000.
Really?
Yeah, so thank you for that.
That's about all we had in the kitty too, probably.
It's a very hushed conversation.
They are,
We
yeah.
don't know whether we need,
So,
we always
Mr.
need Tiffany.
Mr.
We
Chair,
always tell everybody, you want to talk to the woman that knows everything. Everybody wants to talk to
I do
Tiffany.
not know everything.
right, and so now is the time to ask Tiffany or Paula or the mayor any additional questions you may have for them before they go.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to monopolize time, so I thought we might kind of save time of some of my objectives as a member of the committee. It's fairly simple, and it's really to follow the state code. And so to be provided information that's listed here, to have our committee really used. So there's some very bright people. I'm not going to butter anybody up, but got to know everybody pretty well. And certainly the conversations that we've had indicate that everybody is very interested in doing what's right for the city. I share that. So, and following the state code, I think it's pretty clear. So thank you, Mr. Schroeder, for indicating that there's quite a lot that falls under our purview. Now, we're not decision-making body, we're advisory. But I think that the knowledge, the wisdom, and the skill sets that we have could be put to good use. That's essentially what I'm trying to say. So, if I may, really quickly, just read, and again, it's actually highlighted in the handout, so very well done. It starts on page 8 of what I would like to read. Unless somebody else would like to start before that, I think if we start at number 4 on page 8. Well, it's page 8 on mine. Yeah, it'll be page 8. Under the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee shall serve in an advisory capacity and is established to. So what is the purpose of this committee? This is the outline of that. So it assists the government entity in adopting land use assumptions. Mr. Schroeder, land use assumptions are zoning. Are they not? Zoning and use of land?
Actually, land use assumptions are probably defined, so let's just take a look.
That is development.
In adopting
Land use assumptions means a description of the service area and projections of land uses, densities, intensities, and population in the service area, and it's another defined term, over a 20-year period. So an advisory committee to assist the government entity in adopting the land use assumptions, which are part of a capital improvement plan. The description of the service area, so you can have different service areas for different functions. And then the projections of how land uses are going to change over that 20-year period, the density, intensities, and population in the service area over at least a 20-year period. Those are land use assumptions, and then that is what is called out or called for to be included in a capital improvement plan. So you generate and create in a capital improvement plan land use assumptions that are the basis for saying, and this is where some activities or services that are provided are really amenable to back of the envelope calculations like 2 cops per 1,000 people, so many acres of park per 1,000 people, and so forth. But yes, that's what land use assumptions are. But that's, again, be very careful when you read this statute, because every other word has its own definition that is other than what you just think it is. So anyways, I'll stop that one.
Thank you. No, that was very well said. B, review the capital improvements plan and proposed amendments and file written comments. So that would be our feedback to the CIP, to the various departments. Letter C, monitor and evaluate implementation of the capital improvements plan. D, file periodic reports. That's one I think of particular interest. At least annually, with respect to the capital improvements plan, report to the governmental entity any perceived inequities in implementing the plan or imposing the development impact fees. E, advise the governmental entity of the need to update or revise land use assumptions, the capital improvements plan, and development impact fees. And then it skips to 5, or goes to 5. The governmental entity shall make available to the advisory committee upon request all financial and accounting information, professional reports in relation to other development and implementation of land use assumptions, the capital improvements plan, and periodic updates of the capital improvements plan. Okay. And then it gives us, that's what I wanted to read. So that concludes that.
I have a question about the last part here. So it said that the governmental entity, so us will advise them on capital improvement plan updates?
So so the city of
Right,
Mountain
the
Home is
part.
the governmental entity that has appointed a development impact fee advisory committee. But yeah, the governmental entity shall make available to the advisory committee upon request. So then keeping in mind, we've got 2 tasks. One is the February 6th meeting with the county. That governmental entity, being the county, shall provide those reports. But this impact fee advisory committee is also entitled to periodically upon request all financial and accounting information of this governmental entity to that impact fee advisory committee.
And wait, I still didn't answer my question.
What was
So
the
does the governmental entity do the capital improvement plan updates and then provide it to the impact fee committee? So are we saying we're going to go do this road as the city, and then we provide that to the impact fee committee
No,
as our update?
no.
Okay. So like in the street one, because sometimes I get, so in the street one, it has a list of the projects that the city came up with.
Right.
And then we provided that for them to understand what we were doing. Is that still the process, that we will provide the projects?
They are the ones that make written report to you, to the body that adopts the capital. The city council adopts the capital improvement plan.
Okay.
The city council needs a written report filed by this development impact fee advisory committee on that capital improvement plan. They file a written report saying, we've reviewed this report and we think that it's good, we think these assumptions are well based on, and then what he's saying is, you, in addition to just providing that sheet going, we want to build road X,
Right.
there's more to it, because that capital improvement plan requires land use assumptions over the next 20 years.
So to change this capital improvement plan as we do projects, let's say we've completed a project, we're not going to do that one. We've done it, used our capital improvement fees, and we want to add a new street on here. So does the city add the street and then provide that information to them, or do they add that street and provide it back to the city?
Either way,
It goes either way. Okay.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, they would, our department heads would work with this body and say, hey, these are what we'd like to, these are what we see as a need within our department. Educating this body, and then they would work together collaboratively to then move those projects forward and say, yes, this is on the timeline or no.
So does that make sense? We'll recommendations to them, they'll take it and then give a written report.
Correct.
And then we'll take it to the
Goes
council.
to P&Z.
correct.
These guys will do the written report back,
Yes.
I'll do it, yeah.
and then once it's gone through, sorry, I don't want to take up your meeting.
Like, ow.
Once it's all finalized, then we just update the chart here.
Correct.
You just update it, and then you provide a new fee structure.
Yeah. After they, yeah, so the amended CIP, and then that's done through, you gotta have a public hearing
Right.
for that and all that stuff. But yeah, there's an iterative process where there's a back and forth of communication being sent to them. And so in other words, rather than getting a one-liner going, we want street X is gonna cost this much, they're saying, and the statute provides that all of the accounting data, all the assumptions, land use assumptions, and all that based on that are something that they can evaluate and file a written report on that basis. Yeah. Go for
So
it.
I don't think it would be staff, it wouldn't be like the street superintendent, it'd be the public works director, or the police chief.
They could, or whoever has the, I mean, mean, it depends on what questions they have about it. What's this helicopter you want? Sort of thing. Why does the mayor need a car?
I'll take the private jet if you're gonna give me one.
I'll fly it.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, there we go.
As long as it lasts 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years.
It falls under the purview.
Mr. Chair, if I might, Idaho Code, so 678206 actually puts it out, number 2, it should be on page 9. A capital improvements plan shall be developed in coordination with the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee, utilizing the land use assumptions most recently adopted by the appropriate land use planning agency or agencies. So, an example, I think when I first started, we updated the streets, part of the CIP when we took out Autumn Road, Smith Road intersection, and is that West Fifth, I believe it was? Yeah. And then we updated the fees on that. So I think it's kind of one of those, as Mr. Schroeder was saying, just this kind of back and forth working together. And then we send our recommendation up to planning and zoning after that. So
Does it go to planning and zoning, or does it go to
City council.
that's what planning and zoning.
P&Z adopts the amendment to the comp plan, which is the capital improvement plan is a part of the comp plan. So, which is why this, again, I think I said this at the July meeting and the other meeting, but the comp plan, you can update it every 6 months, and you should. You don't have, it doesn't have to be this giant, undertaking, and it can be as simple, so you can update it very frequently. And so, the fact that updating the CIP requires amendment to the comp plan means it has to go to P&Z with 15 days notice and all that stuff, and then they have a public hearing. It can be perfunctory, it can be, just, there you go, have the hearing, and this is what we're adopting, and it's done. So it doesn't have to be a terribly complicated, but it does have to go to P&Z to amend the comp plan.
And the P&Z recommendation goes to
Yes.
council?
Yep.
I think at the end, the council would say, yea or nay, we're gonna do it this way, right?
Counselor, I do have a question with regards to the capital improvements plan as well, and that's going to be on page 10 of 678208. It's about the 5th line from the bottom where it says the capital improvements plan shall be prepared by qualified professionals in fields relating to finance, engineering, planning, and transportation. Can you specify exactly what that means? Does that mean we have to hire some consulting entity to help in assisting that capital improvement plan? Or is our staff, such as Paula, Chris, or, who deals with transportation, Paula with finance, are those considered professionals in the field?
So things that require rate structures, and I know you don't have water and sewer development impact fees, but we'll have some advice for you on that regarding, because they're eligible to it, we haven't done it. But I'll set that one aside. Those sorts of assumptions absolutely require an engineer to weigh in on that facility, what its pipes are, what its capacities are. So you'll need similar things with streets. I would say a street, for transportation stuff, you're going to want our engineer, whatever engineer we have advising us on streets should advise. They're the ones that can bring information about the cost of streets, the required widths, carrying capacity, traffic capacity. This is what we hear all the time. Those are part of the land use assumptions that make this CIP. This intersection can get 50 cars a day. This can get 100. That requires a professional, but qualified professionals in fields related to finance, engineering, planning, and transportation. So
then that brings me back to my question, how would meeting with staff help that, if you have to have traffic counts and all that?
I didn't say we had to have traffic counts, but when you have something that needs traffic counts, or you're making an assumption that a street needs to be widened, this statute is saying,
You have to have professional.
if the CIP, if you create a CIP that just says, we want this,
Right.
and someone comes in and says, how did you come up with that? We just say, well, that's what we thought, versus an engineer said, maybe the engineer's going to say we need a traffic count. I don't know. But
Right.
see what I'm getting at? So
documentation we present to the body should come from an engineer of sorts. So if we have a street or something and we want to know what the cost of that street is, we will have gone to Keller or somebody of that nature who said, this is what it's going to cost to put that in, and that's where,
Right.
is that what it's essentially referring to?
It's kind of saying, because we live with these all over the place, that an entity like Galena Consulting that has prepared capital improvement plans all over the state meets these requirements. I'm not saying you have to do that. What you're getting at is we can do a mishmash. As long as you have qualified people that prepare these plans, you're good. Galena has it all in-house, and they just send you a bill.
And I would assume if staff was doing it, they would have estimates of improvements for the length of the street and everything else. I would think that would be more than adequate to document the cost.
It's not my legal advice that you have to hire a consultant like we have. It's my legal advice that to the extent that this is being provided to this body and they need it, we get qualified professionals as the statute requires.
So let's say Will Street, we just asked Sunrock, hey, give us a,
Yeah. Give
But
us
we
an estimate.
collect on police, fire, and parks also, so not necessarily streets.
But not only that, a quote today is valuable if you don't build a road for a year.
Right.
The price is gonna change. 10 years.
but I would say like if you take the fire department, you go to Taryn and go, hey, what's the cost? What can we do? What we can't do? And he gives us a synopsis, we give that to the body and like, hey, professional, sue him.
And then,
Please don't.
as we've lived with over the years with the one in-house consultant, the person's preparing the plan shall consult with the impact fee advisory committee. So preparing the capital improvement plan, again, going back to that, they may need some information in advance that is like, hey, we're writing this capital improvement plan, shall consult with the development impact fee advisory committee. So,
Mr. Chair, I think for me, I'm just trying to make an example of it. So, reviewing the master transportation plan that we adopted, it looked like we had our top two, I should say, infrastructure projects, correct me if I'm wrong, Brenda, were the light at Airbase Road and Haskett, and then also the light at 14th. Well, when you look at our CIP, we only have Haskett and Airbase Road in the CIP. Well, we can't collect, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Short, we can't collect any impact fees for that specific infrastructure if it's not in the CIP. So I guess that's kind of where I'm coming of is we're meeting quarterly with department heads so that we're all on the same page, because it even says in our master transportation plan, the biggest funding that the city has for these projects is impact fees. Well, if we're not collecting impact fees for this light at 14th that, tragically we had a death at this year, I mean, we're behind the ball already. It lays it out in here about how we have to be listing these deficiencies in that. So
you can't use development impact fees for deficiencies.
correct, and that's what I'm saying. If it's not listed in the CIP, it's a deficiency then.
So, well, you can add it to the CIP, but you have to, the qualified transportation engineers and so forth will outline the deficiency and then segregate out that portion of the improvement that can be relegated to new growth.
Correct.
So, yeah, so the idea that you can meet more frequently, you can also periodically review the land use assumptions, see if they're correct, and then make modifications to and add things to the CIP, is I think what you're driving at.
Yes.
Yes, that can be done.
Okay. And I guess that's what my request, why I pushed this back in November, is that we're meeting so that we are on the same page of that.
That's why Chris and I want to have you guys look at that machine.
Is that, question on that, Mr. Schroeder, can that fall under impact fees? I know the whole 8,
Right.
10-year.
And you have some stuff already in the street one. I think you have a
Plow.
dump truck, snow plow, you have a crosswalk, and
They probably last longer than 10 years, I think.
Is that, I thought that's what it was, had to be more than 10, so.
so you might want to maybe pull those out, make that adjustment so that your fee's not increasing dramatically. dramatically. I did have one more question. You said deficiencies, so the line at 14th, would that then say this much was due to growth, this much was the general fund is going to have to, okay.
Which is why you would need an engineer.
On that one, yeah, good lights or something, yeah.
Yeah, something you should have had, so you can't make the new people pay for something you should have had a long time ago.
Right.
Well, even just reviewing the CIP, going through it, I was surprised to see what we had listed in there. I mean, parks, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not collecting impact fees on parks anymore, correct?
We are collecting, yes, we are.
But we have the pool listed in the CIP, we had bathrooms for the parks and that, so I mean, that's kind of the things where I'm like, we really should be getting together as a committee and working together to make sure that we're, you know, doing that. I know it was stated in the the July meeting about reviewing where growth is happening and making sure that we're doing it, which that's one of my biggest questions, I guess, not to get off topic with the county, is how are we going to make sure funding is staying where, you know, it's being collected and going towards growth, but I think that's the same principle that we should be applying here in town. You know, last year we had a meeting on looking at Smith Road, and you know, we had discussions on that, which I still don't agree with because, you know, I'll just say for the record, I was saying that it was outside of city limits. However, when you go to the Idaho Code, it talks about service area. Service area means any defined geographical area identified by a governmental entity or by intergovernmental agreement in which specific public facilities provide service to development within the area defined on the basis of sound planning or engineering principles and that. So for me, that's something that, you know, we could have still been looking into with Smith Road, is just because it's outside of city limits, we still have the option of doing an intergovernmental agreement with ITD where we could have been taking some impact fees because, you know, we can collect for 8 years and put that towards that where it's not going to be completely coming out of the general budget.
So I guess it helps me understand the question you had for me on, say, the courthouse the other day, but that notion would require that that entity that maintains that road. I don't know if ITD.
Highway district.
So that highway district would have to adopt impact fees.
Which it allows.
Through
Highway district.
Yeah, so anyway, I don't know. It would require a similar thing that's being proposed by the county with that. So it's not.
Anyway, I'm just using an example of trying to illustrate the point that I think it would be highly beneficial for our committee getting together and working on these things to making sure that we are having growth pay its portion so that we're not trying to come up with money like that. So wait to see how we're going to get 14th done. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but where's the money coming for that? And, you know, how close are we to Haskett being done? You know, for that, what have we collected and where we're on that. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox here, but that's what I'm trying to come across here. So
Very good. Moving target.
Mr. Chair, I think that's actually an excellent segue into what I believe has been alluded to but not discussed, and I don't think it really requires much discussion, but it's consider expenditures of development impact fees to be presented to the impact fee board for the purpose of making recommendations to the city council. So this segues, I think, also coordinates well with what Paul was just saying. So the purpose of, as I understand it, the intention of the state code in establishing or allowing the establishment of a committee such as this is that we can help the city, we can help with the city staff, planning and zoning and city council to find opportunities where the money would be best spent, perhaps. And I think that's kind of what Brendan's suggesting. I actually don't have a strong opinion one way or the other on the light on 51, but certainly we're going to need one. once Stan Scott's land develops. So we do want to capture that money to make sure that we have it. And I don't disagree. I think there's probably opportunity to start capturing for it now. Well, as long as Corey Park still builds. Blue Yonder, yeah.
Blue Yonder West as well.
Yeah, yep. So, with that said, I'm not an accountant, but I married one, and that helps a lot for me anyway. So, getting a breakdown, the breakdowns that were provided to me worked great. So I was able to track building permits, monies collected, but what's absent is money spent, if any. If none's spent, fantastic.
Yeah,
What? I say
Brenda-
fantastic.
Brenda asked, I'm like, nothing's been spent.
Yeah.
It's all just sitting there. And then another thing, as a committee, you guys want to make sure of is that money's being held in an interest-bearing account. So you want to make sure that that interest is also being put into those funds.
Is it a high yield interest or is it?
It's the local government investment pool. So it's where all the city's funds are held and you guys get interest on those impacts.
Is it more than 3%?
I don't have it in front of me here.
Okay.
And I'll shoot from the hip.
Otherwise, we're losing money. Okay, that's great. So that's all I had for that particular point.
Further discussion. Is that it for item 6? Or
Does anyone have anything else to add?
anything else?
I guess we'll find out on February 6th. I'll state for our committee, I definitely do not want to make any decisions on February 6th, but rather discuss. It's still a little nebulous, and I'm on that committee for the county. It's a little nebulous as to what exactly, how the monies are planning to be collected, how they're going to be distributed or spent, who is going to collect the fees. I'm assuming that they're, from what I've heard, they're trying to place the onus on the city to collect it.
So what ended up well, I think the council was pretty clear, like, what would end up happening is you collect your own fee, and then your said builder, whoever, comes to the city and shows that they paid their building permit, right?
Yep.
Or since, I guess would be, if it was inside city limits, they would come and, they still have to go there and pay.
They would bring
just
us a
to show.
receipt showing they've paid their county impact fee
Yeah.
for EMS, then we could approve the building permit.
Right. So the original structure of the intergovernmental agreement and the structure of the intergovernmental agreements in other cities that have these buyer fees is they pay the fee to the city collects, accumulates, and then remits those collected fees to the entity that owns them. Then sends a separate invoice for the fee of the task of collection. And I think what both bodies agreed in this instance, in this jurisdiction, it would be much simpler and much more efficient for that person to simply pay the fee directly to the county, then appear here and be able to get a building. This is the enforcement mechanism. You don't get a building permit until you pay the fee. So they show up with the receipt from the county having paid the fee and everything's good. So we're out of the collection and remitting part of it. We're just verifying that it has been paid directly to the county because the county is the entity for whom these are collected and the county is the entity building these improvements.
I think we didn't want to burden staff costs
Yep.
and then have to hold the funds, have that liability portion. Like, hey, where's our fees? We're like, well, it's in this account, and then here, let's transfer.
So if I sorry, Mr.
No, you're good.
So if I understood the explanation correctly, the county is assessing and collecting the fee. So let's say for a house located within the city of Mountain Home, the county will assess or impose and collect for the county portion of the fee in the county. They will bring that receipt here, at which time the city assessment and imposition will be
Bingo.
attributed.
Yep.
And in order to get a building permit, I mean, that's pretty standard, you're absolutely right. So
Yeah.
that's a mechanism to safeguard the city, so people just aren't building things without paying any money. So, and maybe this is a question for February 6th. I do have some concerns with what the county is planning, could be unfounded, in collecting fees for EMS within the city. I know there's a shared agreement with possibly double dipping on the fee.
Okay. So, understand that the mechanism, this city will have to adopt an ordinance and underwrite an intergovernmental agreement for this. This is uncharted territory. The one they had proposed before, where we simply were going to enter into the intergovernmental agreement, that's kind of this framework, but it had a bunch of holes in it. Abby recognizes those, she and I have discussed them, so we have to clean up some procedural things. And as you've just highlighted, there are a couple of things that need more work in the intergovernmental agreement as to who's going to be responsible for adjudicating challenges to the categorization. But I think fundamentally there are issues with the categorizations themselves. They're not fine-grained enough when it comes to non-residential. In fact, there are exactly two categories, residential and non-residential. And the assumptions upon which development impact fees are based is an impact on the delivery of services by the new development. Not all developments impact service delivery in the same way.
Right.
So not all non-residential developments are going to have the same impact. They provided us a chart, or I don't know if everyone here got that, but they sent it to us, and I was reviewing the chart. It's close, it's better, but it's not anywhere close enough. So we're going to have to decide as a city council, City of Glens Ferry, City of Mountain Home, and the county, first of all, how we're going to head off. The idea is get rid of those needs to show up at a council meeting and say, I want an itemized or a customized evaluation. So get those things categorized out the chute before they go in. So with EMS categories, and then the second thing is we need to use the service area part. Abby again and I have discussed this, that and this will be a February 6th discussion, so that a fee payer in the city of Mountain Home is paying for an ambulance shed or an ambulance itself that services the area for that development. And so that the service areas are defined, and they're not perfect, and they could encompass more than we think. I think we were chit-chatting about maybe, you have an I-84 corridor, and you have Glens Ferry and Mountain Home ambulances that share. If you listen to the scanner at all in the wintertime, they're all in the same boat. But the Pine Federal one, I think, is easily cabined out, if you will, service area. So a fee payer in Mountain Home wouldn't be supporting, nor would a fee payer in Pine be supporting one from Mountain Home. I don't think there's a risk of double dipping, but we'll certainly have to look at that and make sure that there's no double fee paying.
I, for one, would like to be included in discussions.
Well, that's
Yeah.
So your task is to get the land use assumptions done correctly, and then the other task of the governing bodies is to make sure that the intergovernmental agreement can support that and it's done in an effective way. And so I think I've shared this before. I just happened to be at a commissioner meeting when a agricultural user was assessed a development impact fee because it was non-residential for merely putting think and I think they understand that now in the checklist, but there's a way, and this governing body, this city council has evaluated people's like addition to a garage at the Idaho power plant. Is this going to create an impact? If not, then it's not an exemption. It doesn't require redefining any of the uses. It just requires making the categories more fine-grained.
And by fine-grained, you mean prescriptive.
Well, you're saying like a bar.
A re-roof
A
is not
bar
going to
is
add.
going to create more demand on the jail and a little bit more demand on EMS than a garage and so forth.
Yep.
So.
Makes sense.
Counselor, with regards to the county impact fees in their impositions, they do intend to assess impact fees on accessory structures. And is that something we will entertain as well?
Well, so it depends on, and I guess that's the other thing, is whose definitions, we need to put this in the intergovernmental agreement, whose definitions of what buildings are going to apply.
What we're willing to.
And so accessory structures can create a demand for service. If we adopt accessory dwelling units, then another 2.5 people in a garage or alley apartment is another cop, another fire, another street, another park. So, yeah. But and then the other thing is who's on the hook for deciding yes or no? Whose body is going to adjudicate those? And I think that's going to have to be them for their fees, but we're going to have some seat at that table, and they have to agree. I just didn't, this just now dawned on me, and not much does just now dawn on me when it comes to impact fees, but the idea of using the definitions in our code versus their definitions is going to be, we're going to have to negotiate that.
So where we may just say new development means new residential, multifamily construction, or
New developments in the state code, we don't get to decide that. It's already, we tried that one back when I was on Gary. Development.
And you guys, and this is just my synopsis too, is that you guys will have to decide, are you going to use the county's impact fee numbers, which to me, you would just take our current impact fee and use those numbers, right? Like you could take their $720,000 for the Mountain Home West Station, but wouldn't you, if it's based off of population growth inside city limits, since that's where you're going to be collecting the fee anyways, wouldn't that money obviously stay in Mountain Home, like we discussed? But then if it's a co-locate, this is 100%, 1,000 or 1,600 square foot, 720,000. But if we're co-locating with the fire station, wouldn't that be 50%? And if we're going to use city impact fee numbers, our numbers are based off of 2,559 in the next 10 years. That's ours. So then that quintessentially is how you get your fee.
2,559 dwellings or people?
Growth.
People,
Yeah.
people, yes, people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 1,000 dwellings.
Was it 2.5 per dwelling unit or something like that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Could be 1,000.
But, well, but that's, yeah, so actually they're gonna be starting over on that calculation based on, because the county is also gonna have numbers. And I think they're gonna have to redo their whole CIP is my guess, for both things. But right now, we'll just do the EMS one. But the jail assumptions are a little tougher.
And just for the committee, I pulled the census numbers and we're right on what our CIP says.
is that 3.1?
Yeah, you can go through it. We have grown so much, I have it every year tracked down, so we're right on what we projected we were going to grow.
Get a copy.
Did you remember when my notes on that or no notes?
Just kidding.
This is, you can actually have this one. This one goes back to 2010 census population and it.
Can I scan this in and then send it to everyone
I was just curious
tomorrow?
for the committee.
Yeah.
Do you want to look at it now?
And I agree, this body, you take the money from Mount Holly, it's gotta stay in Mount Holly. I agree with you guys 100%. I don't want developers here paying for pine, they build, better build. I love those outskirts, but yeah.
Well, the vast majority of the growth is going to occur here. And so that means that the infrastructure and amenities need to stay here where the population is.
Where's he going?
I'm following it.
Everybody's jumping ship.
Money can have.
I think he's got his dad's birthday dinner.
Oh, that's right, he's got a different dad, you didn't know, you found out?
So Paula, does that, your notes, does that include where you pull the data, number of permits, number of...
Census Bureau, but,
Quick facts under
That's
Mount
about
Holly.
3 times higher than the census bureaus that I've checked.
it's, I had a total of today's numbers. This one I did it in July of '23. This is the newer numbers, but we were growing at 3.1% over the years, so.
I'd love to see it. So 3.1%,
Do
you
you
look at the
want-
population, and when you add that number,
I
that's
understand my math.
pretty considerable. I would love noses.
You won't understand it.
I'm a math guy, so
If you
yes.
stop by, I would happily go over it with you,
Perfect.
verbally.
It's arithmetic.
It is like subtraction and side notes.
Yes, it does.
And then one more question, with regards to our older people that have been with us the longest and have guided us. Will we need a formal resignation letter drafted or email?
I think we have it, we just put
Good
it in
enough
the
in the
minutes.
minutes? Okay.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt to jot on paper, I quit.
I'd like to add to that, I'd like to pardon for the last 10 years of all, just call me
When I,
Hunter Biden II and all in favor? Sharon, you got, yeah, we have a second?
I got elected to the council, I had to resign from the library board. And so I used as a model for my resignation letter, that which Richard Nixon used. His press secretary spoke to an Association of Cities meeting, David, his name escapes me now, but he was working in the press office and he had to draft a letter.
Oh, is that right?
It's like, okay, I guess I hereby resign effective.
Is anything else? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to take this opportunity since we have Mr. Schroeder in there. I would like to talk about, since we are together in that, about water and wastewater on that. I keep getting told that it's outside of our purview on that. I've heard, though, that we can do impact fees on water, wastewater. There's a whole list, actually, irrigation and things. So if everyone's okay, I know it's kind of going a little bit over time in that, but I wanted to see if we could talk about that and see kind of the whole process and something if that is, something this board is interested in is looking into impact fees for water and wastewater. I know we had, during a council meeting, we had some representatives come and talk about pressurized irrigation coming out of the Snake River and that. So, yeah, if everyone's amenable to it, or we want to schedule it for our next meeting.
Just recommendation, that would require an engineer. I don't think any staff here, those were set by Keller through numerous studies. So city staff, you'd have to have an engineer do that. So we'd have to pay if you wanted to revisit those.
Counselor, is there a difference between a water availability fee and then a water impact fee?
Yes, and it has been, there are 4 Idaho Supreme Court cases on it, which is why what Paula said is absolutely correct. You've got to have an engineer who certifies and underwrites that the connection fee, there's a number of things, connection fee and then your, general rate, the minimum, the base rate, and then the per gallon or whatever fee that you charge. Statutorily, the connection fee is a buy-in to the existing one and paying for capitalization on replacement and stuff like that. It also allows some room for growth, but it requires a lot of scrutiny with the contours that are left after those 4 Supreme Court cases. They're called the NIPSI, North Idaho Building Contractors versus Hayden cases. And it all rested on the engineer's calculations about the assumptions. And so, in terms of a general discussion, you know all you can know tonight, which is it's something you could do because it is contemplated in this. It's not something the city's currently doing, and we don't know. That's something that Paul and I will really have to take into in terms of the better legal route for the city. So that's all we know now.
Gotcha.
And with increasing the cost of development, you would have your water availability fee and then in addition, a water impact fee, so.
And Mr. Chair, so let me find out is that what you're asking for?
For
A double cost?
not a double cost. So I actually found the city of Nampa, they're actually the first in the state to collect a water, wastewater, and irrigation impact fee. And going through their memos and everything, if I'm right here, and it's funny you should bring that up, they actually quoted the city of Hayden case. The city of Nampa historically recovered a proportionate share of the cost of existing water and wastewater infrastructure and related future capital projects from development through hookup fees. However, the Idaho Supreme Court held in North Idaho Building Contracts Association in the city of Hayden that the cost basis for water and wastewater hookup fees must be limited to the cost of replacing existing infrastructure. Following this decision, the city of Nampa removed the cost of future capital improvements from its hookup fees. So they split it out, essentially. So it's still the same. Sorry, Frank.
No, Brent, that'll make sure that you get your idea. Yep. So I would like to stick to our definitions. So it wouldn't be an impact fee, even though here it's considered as such. What we're discussing, this is why I don't like the term EDUs. I think we need to abandon it and use connection fees or availability fees. I think is a great descriptor. So people aren't left guessing what exactly does that mean. So with the city of Nampa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand it as being a hookup fee, a connection fee, availability fee.
Right.
So that's the collection of terms that they're using, not an impact fee. So even though it is impact based, similar to what we're discussing, it's a hookup fee that we already have. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, and that's the one that engineers. Yeah.
Yep. And Brendan, if I may, I would be interested to know I submitted a public records request and collected the information on, I think it was developments over the last 5 years, roughly 4 or 5 years, and who's paying, how much are they paying, and well, the component that we don't have is if and when monies are being spent that are collected as a part of those particular, I'm going to stop calling them EDUs, but availability fees I think is a better term for it. So we don't know if any the monies that's collected, if any of it has been spent on the improvements of our existing infrastructure, and that's where.
Are we talking water, wastewater now?
Water and wastewater.
Availability.
Availability. That's specific to those two things. So, well, I don't want to keep rambling on. So, for my own sake, for clarity, make sure that we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So is that your understanding as well?
Yeah. And so I guess that's just something that I was curious to see if our board is ready to look into or wanting to. What is our capital improvements? I know we had a tour of the wastewater facility and that. I think, Chris, not to put you on the spot, but I think we had a discussion about, we had plans way back in the day to put aerators in the ponds, and we didn't. just again, going back to that, we're working all together to try and make sure that we're, looking for the future in that. So I think City of Nampa did really good. They had their engineering report. They did all their calculations and everything, which I can send to the committee about wastewater and the fees and that for their calculations and that. But I mean, when we look at the Title 67, Chapter 82, and this puts in their memo, they say the following purpose of IDAC is ensuring that adequate public facilities are available to serve new growth and development. And I know when we go to the code, public facilities is a very broad, I mean, it's water, wastewater, police, streets, and everything like that. So I guess that's why I wanted to have a discussion, is because it seems like we can't talk about it in this committee, but it's outside of our purview, but how are we supposed to be knowing that, what's our calculations? Are we charging correctly? Are we essentially doing this the right way? So.
I'm confused. Are you wanting to do an impact fee for water and wastewater? So you're not wanting to do a
I don't want to
separate
speak for
fee?
Brendan. Sorry, I'm nodding my head.
So you're not wanting to do you want to do an impact fee for water or wastewater? Or you want to know what's going on with the availability fees?
I think it would be bad, yeah, to
You wanna
see
know-
what we're going on.
So you want to know what's going on with the availability fees?
It's,
What Taryn is saying are our hookup fees.
and to see what our,
So you want to know if we collected availability fees for water and wastewater, what we use that for in replacement value?
Correct.
That's what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes.
And public facilities improvements.
Yeah, so when I provided impact fee reports, that was for impact fees, not for availabilities. So you're looking to see what capital improvements have been done, so we can
Or
tell you,
planned for.
recently we gave money to the irrigation district, so is that what you're looking for?
Yep.
Okay,
I wouldn't mind that too, so I'll second it.
so the question was formed as impact fees, not what's been in availability fees.
Right, I think looking at the availabilities and seeing how we're calculating it and all this
So
stuff.
I can't tell you the calculation, that is set by the engineers, that was in the ordinance. Yeah, so I can't tell you how that's being calculated. I can tell you how impact fees are calculated, I can tell you per mile and,
So the connection fees, yeah, Chris will be able to supply, the engineers
Excuse me.
how that fee is calculated, how much of it is allocated to existing, like water development, we have some of it's allocated to buying water rights, it's for, well, I can't remember how that all.
Well, I'm sure city council spent hours and staff on those calculations
oh yeah, lots,
Yeah.
lots and lots.
for years.
Information goes back and forth.
Are we collecting enough? That's a $1 million question. We've raised fees over 30%. If they would have just gradually down that 4.99% for the last 20 years, we would have been where we were at today. When I took office, we were in the hole in the wastewater. We couldn't go out for a loan.
We couldn't do a DEQ loan because we weren't the full collector. Correct.
Right. So I don't want to pay any more fees, but to do any infrastructure, wastewater infrastructure, which we all know now, that's top priority. Our water, we're fine with water. Just our senior water rights, we got enough. So if you hear the chicken little, the sky's falling, we don't got enough water, no, we're fine. And then when you take all of our water rights, we got enough for 3 more wells. And that was with Keller we met with last week.
I can tell you what,
We just gotta find the water. Gotta have a healthy well.
Center of the earth,
the
Gary.
base rate and consumption fees, and in most instances, connection fees as well, this city is not alone. In the other cities I represent, it is the perennial issue. In fact, most of those cities have to rely on either rural water to help them get rate studies to validate the rates. I think 2 or 3 cities I represent right now are in the middle of trying to reevaluate their rates to make sure that they're correct. But it is everywhere. Where is this connection fee adequate for what you get when you make the connection? And in most cases, the answer is no, because it
against the city of Hayden, that was litigated for, was it like 5 to 7 years or something like that, or 10 years? It's a lot of legal fees. And I'm like, we don't want to be paying that here. So I guess that's kind of where I'm like, maybe we really should be investigating that to make sure we're covering ourselves. Not saying that city staff and everything, but if we're working together, we should be all on the same page with that. So I don't know if that's something we're interested in adding for one of our discussions to dive into that, or...
If you make a motion, I'll second it.
What are you trying to discuss?
The hookup fees, evaluating.
So we can provide you the data, but I don't, it has to go through an engineer. Like, we can provide you the data how we got there, but just general discussion on change it, that has to.
No, and I
Oh,
get
okay.
that. I'm saying,
like, what, you wanted to change it?
No.
You're scaring me.
Let's do a starting point. Let's see where we're at, because there's a lot of discussion on the wastewater, and it's, are we going to get a grant for it? Are we going to raise fees? Are we going to do a pond? Are we going to do a treatment plant? Like, I think these are all within our purview, and we should be doing this to help city council make those decisions on that.
So what is it that you want? Do you want anything the city staff to provide? Or are you guys just going to have a general discussion?
General discussion if we could, but having how we're calculating what we've collected, all those.
So,
Am I making a little sense?
well, yes and no, because I'm confused by it. Not because you're not making sense, it's just not. So, when we collect availability fees, do those go into their own fund? And then we expend those on either water or wastewater for operations and maintenance, or?
No, capital improvement plan. So if a pipe is failing, I think we had a College Park plan, but we didn't do it because the cost to do it was too much. The aeration at the wastewater lagoons, that is out of availability. We're working on that. That's done. I heard you mention that earlier. It's like, yeah, we're in the process of doing that.
Yeah.
So those are availability funds.
And those are budgeted dollars?
Yes, those are discussed during the council's budget hearing. So the council has said, we're going to do these capital improvement projects with availability funds.
Right.
So that's how it's expended. And if the project's too costly, so you budgeted $1 million and the cost went to 2.1 million, that comes back to the council, and then we say we're going to shelf that, but we're going to try and do something else.
So just to make sure I'm clarified, but they are capital improvement plans. So do we have a CIP or anything for water, wastewater?
We have a strategic plan that the department heads work on.
So I was wondering, I mean, we view the CIP, so shouldn't we be doing that as well as?
Those are they're for the council. I don't know.
They can, any data that they need to evaluate land use assumptions.
I can give it to you, but, so it's a pretty big 10-year plan. Underneath it, it will have like the regular expenditures for maintenance and operation. It'll say what and they're currently updating it. In January, we update it. And then underneath there, it will list your impact fees. They're a different color. I try to do those in purple, but also then on just water, wastewater, it will show the availability, and maybe Taryn will be able to point it out, because I have a whole nother column on the, I call it the octopus sheet. There's a whole nother column that shows you just availability and what the plans are, and it will be like, this year's 1.1, we're going to try and do that project.
Okay.
But sometimes they get pushed out, just like I said, if you can't do it, that's why we updated them in January, they get pushed out. I'm happy to share them with you, but they're definitely a draft. But I could email that to you guys tomorrow as draft form, and yeah.
Yeah, I think it just would be great.
Super color coded.
That's fine, is we just get
That's
something.
what I do with my, is it a spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I do too. I'll go cross-eyed otherwise.
It'll say availability, and at the bottom, you'll be like, oh.
Follow it, Taryn.
I love it.
That's why I'm like, Taryn, just drop by, I'll tell you about it.
So yeah, I just don't know what we have for capital improvement plans listed on there. And when we're reading the code and we're talking about our purpose, it seems like that is in our purview, that we should be making sure that we have enough, for information to facilities for growth. So I know that's come up a lot, so I
No,
just
that's
want to
fine.
make sure.
I have actually extra budget books and I'm happy to give you guys too. I mean, and then, so, do we have a budget book here?
Brendan, back here.
So this will be, I know we're probably completely off topic, but when the council approves their budget, like, there'll be a list at the back for them to review, because you're approving it in June or July, and you're like, well, I don't know what I did in this December. But it'll have here, let me do water, wastewater. Let's see what I have here.
Brandon.
It'll break it out. There's your availability. Yeah, so I'm happy to give you one of these books.
And availability, is it number of units and listed by that nebulous term EDUs?
That's water.
Is it
That's-
gallons per minute?
EDUs is equivalent dwelling unit.
No, I
Which
know.
is a doorstep. That
What's the metric?
That
What's our
term-
unit of measure? When you
we
say
did-
availability, what are we measuring?
I'm pretty sure it was 5,000 gallons,
Is it
correct?
hippopotamuses?
So,
Yeah, so we're off here.
we're heading out of it. So,
I like it.
talking about availability fee, it's for hookups. Water availability fund, fund that gives money to make sure there's water available.
Okay, so we're not including, let's just say, availability of units in that. It's purely financial.
It's not-
Right, so
Okay.
we project, we think we're gonna sell this many building permits. Say we're gonna do 100 building permits, and then we say, okay, of the 100 building permits, we know we have to have, it's 4,200 for connection.
For sewer, yes.
Sewer, so we are gonna project that we're gonna gain $42,000. And then we have to also project, well, how much was left in that fund and move that forward. And then we have to backtrack into that worksheet to say, okay, now we have $420,000. What project can we do with that?
Excellent.
Does that
Perfect.
help?
Yes, it does. That helps a lot.
Okay.
And Brandon, if I may weigh in, I think what you're getting at least my brain, the way it understands it, I'm looking at Title 67, Chapter 82, the very end of page 2, which is definitions, talks about impact fee, and then the entirety of page 3 talks about, again, it's kind of our capacities, what's within our purview. Mr. Schroeder answered that wonderfully, for me anyway, at the beginning of the meeting, just said it definitely falls within our purview, knowing wastewater. So I'm interested in capacities. Hopefully we can say availability units or something of the sort.
So I don't know capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
And then and making sure that we stick to that. So I have some angst about Keller a bit, and not that they're not doing a good job. They're very, very good engineers. Problem is, I do know that like cities like Stanton or Staten, Oregon, they were way over capacity on half the city, and according to their models, effluent sewer would be overflowing out of the manholes everywhere. Well, it just so happens I went there several times, and guess what was not coming out of the manholes? Sewer. So a little critique of models too, where having
I see
engineering
what you're
background
saying.
myself, you put in safety factors for everything. Every calculation has a safety factor, so there's a super cushion provided. And sometimes engineers need a little cajoling to live more in the realm of reality rather than the sky's falling.
So is there a document or a location that the city has a record of available EDUs in gallons? Same with water, sewer and water. Do you guys track, do you have a document that you can share with this group? So
We have,
you and I've had a couple of conversations.
we have a declining balance. Sorry to use the word, tool, that Keller, it's a model that Keller's redoing for us right now so that we can get an accurate site picture today. I have one, but it's not accurate anymore. It's one that was created years ago and didn't account for the growth of the community. So we're sorry, Taryn, but we're having a new one built. It's going to be presented to city council.
Oh, that's good. That's good news.
Oh, okay.
And that should be live streamed.
And that'll show us, so again, we talk EDUs, which is quite frankly, it's just, the term doesn't work.
I agree with you.
We need to know gallons,
I could not
right?
disagree more. I don't think that's correct. And here's why. So engineering assumptions are made on a certain number of thousand gallons per day for a dwelling. So we measure almost everything we do in a city with dwellings. Almost all of it's with dwellings. So then you have other uses that will use more than a dwelling, and some will use less than a dwelling. So to account for that, engineers make up this fantasy chart that says, well, a dentist's office is going to use a quarter of what a house will. And so you make an equivalent dwelling unit table. So we call them equivalent dwelling units. But I think that's a perfectly useful term.
It doesn't get us the
This isn't a legal
information that we
question,
need,
but it's
though.
like, it's a language that engineers and city utilities use because they will convert things like dollars, or they'll convert things like gallons, or wells, or sewage plants. And that's the language that's used in comprehensive plans to say, this city has a capacity of this many equivalent dwelling units. That's either 50 houses, or 25 fourplexes, or one dentist's office, or one architect, or whatever.
Right.
So
I think I sent out the email that has the resolution that shows how we calculate our dwelling units. So hopefully that will help you understand.
I believe we did get something on that, but I'm looking for, so for me, it helps me understand, you know, hey, we have a capacity of X number of gallons, right? Because that's what sewer's calculating, right? We have gallons per minute of flow, et cetera. So for me, it helps me understand, hey, we have an EDU for a house is 5,000 gallons, right? I mean,
For water EDU.
yep, for a water EDU. So it just helps, and I think it would help these guys understand, hey, this is how this stuff calculates out, so that when we're talking about overflowing the banks of the ponds, we can go, okay, are we really, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to, because
I think I've got a pretty good understanding of it. It's the application. So when people speak of things loosely, there's nothing but confusion.
There you go.
I think been a big problem.
Yeah.
So BDU,
So I'll retract
5,000.
my worthless statement on the EDU.
Well,
I just think it would help to put, you know, hey, if we have these documents that show EDUs equal a hospital, how many EDUs do we have? You know, an ADU, how many EDUs is an ADU?
A car wash.
Right? Car wash, yeah.
So I think the objection is sometimes they're imprecisely thrown around. So,
There you go.
There it is.
So don't hate the player game.
And I would add a little bit on to the EDUs, because we
You gotta
don't
wear a
measure
sideways hat for that.
wastewater, because we measure water going in, but we don't meter wastewater coming out. So we need those calculations to know what a car wash is using and what a hospital is using. So for us, equivalent dwelling unit, it works for us.
It's just a term, but there's got to be some numbers behind that term, and that's what I'm looking for, is what's the numbers
Well,
behind
it could open up, I want to belabor the point, it could open up Pandora's box, because it'll depend on how big the hospital is, and on how big the car wash is, and depend on how many fixtures.
But wouldn't it help you to know how it's calculated?
Isn't there a
How
chart?
it's calculated would be very helpful.
I think were you here during, we did
I
the
was here with
discussion for the barista?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, so that's the same chart.
Same chart, yeah.
Hasn't changed.
Oh, it
That's
has
the
changed.
resolution, yeah, that's the resolution that I sent out in the email.
The resolution is it stays the same.
No, that's the chart, right?
That's the chart.
That's the
Yeah.
chart. Shows you how, what a daycare
Yeah.
calculates out.
Correct.
Yeah, should just be kind of a spreadsheet snapshot in there.
I get the capacity thing. I guess for me, it's just trying to figure out, are we collecting enough? You know, we've been talking, this one talks about the pond or the 60 to, what was it, Chris, $100 million for a treatment plant. I'm getting sticker shock. And I'm kind of like, well, I think we should be making sure that we're doing our due diligence and keeping up with that, you know. Meridian just spent, I think it's like $142 million upgrading their wastewater treatment plant, and they had to use their ARPA funds, they used impact fees, and they had to go and bond it out. And I'm like, well, I don't want to go out to the public saying, hey, we're going to have to bond this because we didn't have money or we weren't collecting or for whatever reason. So
6,000 residences doesn't math out correctly for $100 million. That's a lot of money.
Well said.
That's roughly what we have is about 6,000 residences. So 16,000 people is kids included, and so, we gotta get ahead of this before it becomes a problem, more so than it already is.
And that can't fall entirely on new development. First of all, it'd be illegal. But
Exactly.
secondly,
But
it's
it
not
should-
caused by new development.
But
Everybody
new development should pay their fair share.
proportionate share.
Yes.
So I guess with that, I was just gonna, anyone entertain a motion then to set a special meeting to have discussion to overview our water, wastewater, finances, capital improvement, all those things that we've been discussing.
Brendan, I do, I think so. If I can ask Chris a really quick question. I don't think Keller's presence is necessary to explain these things. I think you do a great job at explaining it, and so would you be able to collect that information from Keller? How they calculate, you probably already know it.
Yeah, but if I can, I want the declining balance tool before we do that.
Of course.
They have not given me a firm delivery date on that yet, so, they haven't.
Okay.
I don't know that we want to set a date until I actually know when it's going to come, but I can communicate that out to you. But it feels like it'd be a little premature to pick a date and then not do it.
I agree.
Yeah, so.
Well, we can still make a motion to pass, we just don't, or can we? I guess well, I guess we wouldn't need a motion.
Well, I
We
guess
can agree.
motion to have a special meeting on water and wastewater to be determined date.
Okay, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There's nothing else?
Oh,
We have a ball
you
game.
didn't tell us who your replacements are.
We're working on it.
I made nominations over the years and on deaf ears, so. Yes, here, motion for adjournment?
Or we set the next meeting is in April?
Yes.
Yes,
That
it's
was
already been
earlier.
set.
I'm sorry.